So you have heard someone saying, I'm applying Agile methodology. You have heard someone saying, I'm a certified Agile project manager. I'm a certified Agile project implementer. You've heard someone saying, I know about Agile. So what exactly is this Agile methodology that we talk about in project management? You're going to find out as we go through this video. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to my channel. So in this video, we're going to cover what is Agile methodology in project management. We're going to cover in terms of definitions of terms, what terms do you use in Agile methodology. We are also going to cover the Agile Manifesto. We are also going to cover the principles of Agile methodology. We are also going to cover the mindset of the Agile methodology. We are also going to cover the methods for Agile methodology. So in project management, there are basically three types of methodology that you can also choose from before you even initiate the project, whether you're a project sponsor, whether you're a project manager, or probably you're even a project team member. So the three items or the three methodologies are, there is one which is called predictive methodology. So in predictive methodology, this is where you actually execute a project where most of the things are actually very clear. For example, you know the cost. For example, you might know even the timeline and also the scope. So you use what is called predictive methodology. I'm also going to create another video on predictive methodology so that at least you can compare the two or the three of them. Then the second one that we have is Agile methodology. So in Agile methodology, in most cases, you are focusing more on delivering as much scope as possible within a specific timeline and also within a specific cost. So the idea is to have value-driven delivery in Agile methodology. Then also we have the hybrid methodology. In hybrid methodology, in most cases, you are mixing the two. You are mixing both predictive and also Agile methodology. Sometimes you start with predictive and then you finish with Agile, or sometimes you start with Agile and then you also finish with the predictive. So these are the three main methodologies that you have to choose from if ever you want to execute any project. But in this particular video, we are going to cover Agile methodology. So let's try to understand what is Agile. So Agile methodology is value-driven methodology, which means when you're executing a project, you are focusing more on the value that you're going to produce. And you find that you go through a series of activities, and we're going to cover that in this particular video. But at the end of the day, you want to provide value as quickly as possible. So how do we provide this value? There is a term or a concept called minimum viable product, which is MVP. So it's a very common approach that is used in Agile methodology. So what does it mean? It means you create a usable product. It might not have all the features, but at least it's usable. What it means is the users or the beneficiaries of the product or the project, they start seeing value as quickly as possible. And then you start incrementing the values as you go. So we are going to cover two types of Agile methodology, the iterative and also the incremental. So this is what we're also going to cover as part of this. But let us understand exactly what is Agile methodology. So in Agile methodology, the first thing that you have to consider is iterative delivery. So what do we mean by this? It means you get feedback as quickly as possible, or you work in collaboration with the users as much as possible. You create the first, the first part or the first model of the product. Say, for example, it's a product or of a result or even of a service. And then you present it to the end users. And then the end users are going to have the first feel of the product or the service or even the result. And then they are going to give feedback in terms of what needs to be corrected, what needs to be improved. So Agile methodology, initially, it was very much oriented towards software development. But it later on evolved to be used in almost every industry that we have. I can give you an example of a car manufacturing. They just create the first model of the car with everything that works. Then they get feedback from the users. They go back again iteratively. They also create another one. Then the other part of it is incremental. Incremental is a bit different from iterative. Iterative, you take the complete product, you improve or you change features, you present to the client. But when it comes to incremental, we are putting more features on top of the existing product. That's the main difference between iterative agile approach and also incremental. Say, for example, I'm going to give you an example for a software product. You have an accounting package you are creating as a product, and you only had, say, for example, accounts receivable. Okay, you don't have account payable module. So you first deploy the account receivable module, whilst the account payable module is being created. Then the next deployment or release that is going to come, it will also put two modules, which means the already existing accounts receivable module and then the new accounts payable module. So that's an increment. So iterative and incremental agile methodologies, they're a bit different. I've seen some project managers mixing the two, but I need you to take it clearly that the two, they're actually different. Iterative, you finish the product, you present to the customer, you get improvement or changes, you start again the product like that. But incremental, you put additional features to the product as you go. So those are the two main types of agile methodology that you must make sure that you are able to differentiate. And like I said earlier, you have predictive or agile. In most places, they want to classify it as predictive and adaptive, which means adaptive, you change as you go. So one of the main items that you consider for agile methodology is customer collaboration all the way up to the end. So in an agile methodology, you want the customer to give you the feedback as quickly as possible. We are going to cover the process of agile methodology as we go. You also want the customer to have a feel of the product that we are also creating. I can tell you, in agile methodology, you use both prototype and also MVP. Let me differentiate the two for you. In most cases, a prototype is not something that is usable, but it's something that can be used to show progress. It's something that can be used also to allow the end users of the project deliverable to see how the product is going to look like. As compared to MVP. MVP, you are actually giving a workable product with just limited features. Okay? So you want to have collaboration from the customer all the way up to the end. We are going to cover on that. And one of the items you can differentiate agile methodology from predictive is what is called adaptive planning or rolling wave planning. So what do we mean by rolling wave planning? In agile methodology, you only plan before you actually execute what is called a sprint. We are going to cover all these terms as we go through the video. So you only plan, the more you get more information and the more requirements, they become very clear. So you plan against that and then you work on that. So this is part of what is agile methodology. You are focusing more on value than focusing on time. So let us go through again and understand more terms as we go through the agile methodology. So in this section of the video, we are going to cover why agile was born. You might be asking, but predictive has been there some hundreds of years ago, although documented or undocumented, but it has been there. Then why should we have agile? So there were certain weaknesses that were being picked when it comes to predictive project methodology, and one of them is in terms of there's a lot of formalized design and planning at the beginning of the project. But as you go through the project, you find customer requirements, they evolve, and also in most predictive environments, you execute the project and you only see the benefits or the results right at the end. So it was apparent to have something that can give you results as quickly as possible. Even if you are executing a project that is going to take some years or so, but at least within a shortest possible time, you are able to see some results. So Waterfall approach was actually very formalized, and also predictive was not allowing for scaling, which means as you try to increase the scope. Predictive does not allow you to do that. If you want to increase the scope or you want to change anything, it has to go through the formal change process, get approved, then you come back, you change the documents. But this is a bit different when it comes to Agile methodology. In Agile methodology, you accept changes as you go. What is going to happen is there's going to be prioritization of those changes or requirements or even user stories in Agile methodology. So that is going to show the difference. You're going to see it as we go through the flow of Agile methodology. So now, Agile methodology can also be used in so many industry. So initially it was for software, but now it can be used for other industry. You'll find that when it comes to projects where you're supposed to create a new product, Agile methodology is a bit in terms of speed, is faster than predictive. Remember, I said predictive, you wait until the end and then you get the product. But for Agile methodology, you start seeing the benefits of the product as you go, either through incremental or through iterative approaches. In a nutshell, let us look at the flow of Agile process. So Agile process is going to start with the product backlog. Okay. So once you have your product backlog, there's going to be a sprint meeting. There's going to be a sprint planning meeting by the development team, which means they are going to pick the prioritized product features or user stories from the product backlog. They have a meeting, sprint planning meeting. They agree on what is going to be executed or created in the next sprint. So in that sprint planning meeting, they come up with what is called a sprint backlog. So the sprint backlog is also going to be used by the sprint team or sprint development team to create the new features in the next sprint. So once the sprint backlog has been agreed, they go through the sprint, which means they do the actual execution. But before they do the actual execution, they also do the normal project management activities like planning, risk identification, stakeholder identification, and so on and so forth. So after execution of the sprint, they now have incremental features of a product or a service. So they invite the customer to a meeting. This meeting is called sprint review meeting. So this sprint review meeting, the purpose of this sprint review meeting is to show the customer what has been produced and to allow the customer to give feedback. Remember, Agile, we said it's collaboration, customer collaboration from the beginning all the way up to the end. So during the sprint review meeting, this is where they invite the customer, they demonstrate, or the development team is going to demonstrate what features were actually added or incremented into the product, and then they get customer feedback. So once that feedback is received, they note down whether they have to make some changes or it has been accepted by the customer. Then after the sprint review meeting, the next part of the flow of Agile is to go through what is called a retrospective meeting. Retrospective meeting is mainly the development team, not the customer. And you could be asking, Oscar, what is this retrospective meeting all about? Retrospective meeting is a meeting that is going to be convened to make sure that at least you understand how you managed to run the project, what were the lessons learned, both positive lessons and negative lessons. You also want to understand and appreciate what are the do's and don'ts. You also want to understand and appreciate what you can do more, what you can do less, based on your previous iteration. You also want to understand the velocity. Do you need to increase? Do you have to reduce? So you could be asking, what is velocity? In velocity, in Agile project approach, is how much load can the team carry in terms of features in an iteration? How much can they produce in a given period? Say, for example, the iteration they were able to do. It's normally done in points, 50 points. So if you've got 500, you do the mathematics to see how many iterations you need. So velocity in Agile methodology is very, very important to understand how much the team can carry within a specific iteration and deliver what is expected. So a retrospective meeting is very important. It feeds into the next iteration. Remember, you're talking about what you can do more, what you can do less, the do's and don'ts, so that your next iteration is going to be better. In the next section of the video, I'm going to explain to you the main differences between Agile and also traditional project management. So we are going to look at different dimensions. For example, what is fixed in terms of planning, in terms of delivery, in terms of customer role, in terms of change, also in terms of progress, in terms of team structure, in terms of risk profile. So let's go through the differences between Agile and traditional. So as you can see on the screen, the first dimension we're going to look at as we compare Agile and traditional project management is what's fixed. You find in traditional, or we normally call it a waterfall or predictive approach, scope is actually fixed. And then we have the time is also fixed, and also the cost is also fixed. But when it comes to Agile, we are focusing more on the value and quality and also on time. Then when it comes to the dimension on planning, we have traditional or waterfall. We have comprehensive planning upfront. In most cases, for traditional approaches, you plan upfront before doing anything else. And then when it comes to Agile, we have what is called rolling wave, just-in-time planning. You plan as you get closer to execution of some of the project activities. Then in terms of delivery, traditional approach is normally a big bang at the end, which means you wait until the project is almost over for you to start gaining or seeing benefits of the project. However, when it comes to Agile, you have incremental every sprint. So you increment every sprint, so you start seeing values as quickly as possible. Then in terms of customer role, in a traditional waterfall, you have sign-offs of customer requirements right at the start and also at the end. But as compared to Agile, you have continuous collaboration when it comes to customer role. You work with the customer from the beginning all the way up to the end. And then when it comes to dimension for change, for traditional, you have formal change control, which is mostly costly. So you agree on the scope of the project at the beginning, and then you formalize anything that has to come as a change into the project. However, when it comes to Agile, you find that change is expected. You're expecting change. Even the last minute change, you should expect it in Agile environment. And change is always welcome, and it's cheap because you do it as early as possible. Then in terms of progress as a dimension, you'll find that for traditional, it has to be a percentage complete versus plan. But for Agile, you're working with output delivered. What are you delivering in Agile approach? Then in terms of team structure, you have functional silos, which means you have different systems working independently for traditional waterfall approach. When it comes to Agile, you actually have cross-functional and self-organizing teams. That is the main difference between the traditional team and Agile. In Agile, they are self-organizing, which means if you are an Agile project manager or Scrum Master or whatever, you have to make sure that you are letting the team self-organize themselves and you just work as a facilitator or servant leader. Then in terms of risk profile, you find that traditional has got a high risk, okay? Because you might discover some of the things right at the end, which might be costly. Agile, you find it's a low risk because you discover. So this was the main comparison between Agile and traditional. The main reason why I had to present this is people have to appreciate and understand why Agile came into play when traditional was already existing and it was already working. So you might be asking, what actually are the benefits of Agile methodology? There are 4 basic benefits of Agile methodology. And the first one is it's faster to market. Say, for example, you have a product which you are going through incremental. It's faster to market that product. So Agile normally is very good when it comes to new products. And also it helps to reduce rework. So what do you mean by rework? In a predictive approach, you execute the project until the end, then you present the product to the customer or the client. If there are going to be any changes after that period, you might have to rework. And it might be costly because some of the items might not be reusable after reworking. But when it comes to Agile, because you're going through the sprints, it's very easy to make those quick corrections. And also you find that you're likely going to succeed using Agile as compared to Predictive. You might be asking, why is that? It's because in Agile, you are focusing more on producing or creating as much as many requirements as possible. You want to complete as much scope as possible within a specific time and cost. As compared to predictive, where you want to make sure that you have a specific scope that you have to complete within a specific time and cost. So you might spend more time on the items which are not giving more value to the customer as compared to spending more time on what is giving value to the customer. So in this section of the video, I'm going to cover the main Agile terms that you normally find in an Agile environment. So you have a product owner. So in an Agile environment, a product owner is responsible for creating the product backlog, is also responsible for prioritizing the product backlog. What do we mean by this? Product owner is a representative of the end users. They know the requirements which are valuable and which must be executed earlier as compared to the others. So they prioritize them. Which one is first? Which one is second? How do they do that? They use what is called the product backlog. So from this product backlog, this is where the technical development team, they start executing the items, or they start providing solutions for the requirements as prioritized from the product log. How do they do this? They also have a meeting, which is a sprint planning meeting before they execute. So what are they doing in the sprint planning meeting? Sprint planning meeting is the meeting that is held by the development team to agree and understand what is going to be in the next sprint based on the product backlog. So they'll pick the product backlog, the first prioritized item. They put it in the sprint backlog, which means what they are going to create during that sprint. And using that sprint meeting and also the sprint backlog, they can now execute an iteration, okay, or a sprint, if you want to take it that way. So product owner is the main player when it comes to Agile methodology. They create the requirements, user stories. They also help to prioritize the requirements and the user stories. Do not make a mistake I've seen with other project managers. They want to create a product backlog when it comes to Agile methodology. That is incorrect. If the product owner is not appreciating, is not understanding what is a product backlog, it is your responsibility as a project manager to make sure that you educate them. You don't do it, you educate them in terms of the importance of having a product backlog. And then they should be able to create. Don't ever make a mistake of creating a product backlog or even prioritizing it. It is the responsibility of the product owner. So we have discussed about sprint planning meeting, which is a meeting which is held before execution of the next sprint. And the purpose is for people to understand what is going to be in the next sprint. Then we have another term for sprint backlog, which means this is the list of requirements or user stories that has to be executed in the next sprint. So the other term that you are going to find so common in Agile methodology is sprint or iteration, which is the amount of work that is going to be done within a specified period. In most cases, 2 to 4 weeks. You'll find that you have a sprint which is going to run 2 to 4 weeks, which means within 2 to 4 weeks, there are certain items you agree to deliver in terms of features, in terms of benefits, depending on the type of the product or the project that you are running. So you are using the sprint backlog to run your sprint. Then one of the terms you're going to also come across is a daily stand-up meeting. What do we mean by this? So during an agile project or agile execution of a project, you want to have daily stand-up meetings. And do not make mistakes I've seen with other project managers. Daily stand-up meetings should always run maximum 20 minutes, but up to 15 minutes is acceptable. So what is the purpose of this meeting? This meeting is supposed to discuss only 3 specific points. So the first one is to discuss what was done yesterday by the team. Remember, they're in a sprint. They have a sprint backlog. What was done yesterday by the team? You also want to understand what is planned to be done today. That is also very, very important in a daily stand-up meeting. You also want to understand what are the impediments, what are the blockers. So if you are an Agile project manager or a Scrum Master, you always want to remove these you always want to remove these impediments or these blockers. So it's one of your objectives to make sure that you remove all those blockers. So in a daily stand-up, you want to understand what are the blockers. You remove the blockers. Then the other common term you are going to find in Agile methodology is what is called a release. So what do you mean by a release? A release is, it might contain a number of iterations, but this is a deployable list of features that can be used by end users. So a release can contain one iteration, or a release can even contain a number of iterations. So it all depends on the type of the project that you're executing. Some release might take a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on and so forth. But the moment you deploy them as part of the features of the product, they become usable, okay? So it's also very important to understand what is actually a release. So let us look at the three main roles that you find in an Agile setup. There are basically three of them. The first one is the product owner. So we need to understand exactly what is this role all about and why do you need it. So let us go through what is expected of these roles. So the first role we are going to look at is the product owner. So product owner is the one who owns the product backlog. A backlog is a list of features or user stories that are used to provide requirements to the Agile management process. Then the product owner also sets and communicates the product goals. The product owner also orders backlog items, that is prioritizing backlog items, and also accepts or rejects each increment. So as you go through the Agile methodology, you find that new requirements, they normally come even during or even after an iteration. So it is the responsibility of the product owner to make sure that that is prioritized. So the product backlog is normally not a fixed list of items. It can be rearranged depending on what the product owner sees as best in terms of giving value from the project. He also represents stakeholder interests. So a product owner represents a stakeholder interest. So product owner is one of the key roles that you should always have in a project environment. And in this Agile project environment, if you don't have a product owner, then it implies that you're actually going to have difficulty. Actually, it's not even advisable to go for Agile. There must be someone who owns the requirements. There must be someone who owns the user stories, the features that you're going to produce as a development team. So it's quite important that you should always have a product owner as a role in an Agile setup. So in an Agile setup, you normally have a servant leader. I want to emphasize on that statement. What do you mean by a servant leader? A servant leader is someone who is always fetching the water, if I can use that statement, for the team. Someone who is facilitating. It's different from a predictive environment where the project manager is actually the one who is running things, who is making decisions each and every time. But in an Agile environment, people, they normally use two terms. The first one is you might be called an Agile project manager. Also, depending on the type of Agile that you're running, you might have what is called a Scrum Master. So the purpose of this role is to facilitate the Agile process or methodology. So let us look at what is expected of these roles, of this Scrum role in an Agile environment. So a Scrum Master is expected to be coaching the team on Agile practice and is also expected to remove impediments and also blockers. Remember, in an Agile environment, there's a daily stand-up meeting, and this daily stand-up meeting, it means one of the items to be discussed is impediments and blockers. So the Agile project manager or the Scrum Master is expected to remove these impediments. Then is also expected to facilitate events. If there's something that has to be, it's supposed to protect the team. So if there's something that has to be managed, the Scrum Master is supposed to facilitate that. Then you also have the Scrum Master is also expected to protect the team from distractions. The team must focus on delivery. Remember, you have a sprint which is running for 2 to 4 weeks. So it is expected that the team should not be distracted by anything else. And this is the responsibility of the Scrum Master or Agile Project Manager. It's also expected to save the organization's Agile adoption. Some organizations, they take long to adopt to anything. So the Scrum Master is expected to help the organization to adopt to Agile methodology. So, Scrum Master or Agile Project Manager is a very important role in an Agile environment, especially when it comes to facilitation, especially when it comes to a removal of impediments and also blockers. They are a bit different from a predictive project manager because remember in Agile methodology, the team is self-organizing. So the Scrum Master is more of, can I say, breaking barriers in case there are some challenges which are coming in. They focus more on that. They leave the team to organize on what to do, how to do it, and then the expected results. The third role that you should expect in an Agile environment is the development team. So what do you mean by development team? In an Agile setup, obviously there must be some team which is going to be responsible for creating the requested deliverables or even product, service, or whatever results that you expect. So this is what is called the development team. They are responsible for creating the features, they are responsible for creating the user stories, they are responsible for creating the requirements that are coming from the product backlog. So in most cases, it doesn't contain one person unless it is a very, very small project, like maybe painting a house or something. But for bigger projects, it might contain a number of people. And this number of people, you might also be forced to segregate them into individual work streams, just for you to be able to deliver in terms of product or Agile methodology. So let us go through what is expected of this role in an Agile environment. So in terms of development team, it's normally a cross-functional design and also build for tests. Then you also have it as a self-organizing and no sub-teams. In most cases, you might not find some sub-teams. And also you have 3 to 9 people for optimal communication. Then accountable for the definition of done. What is done? What do you mean by done? Then it's also commits to sprint goals collectively. So, development team should always be existing in an Agile environment. These are the people who are going to actually execute and produce the required results. So in this section of the video, we are going to cover in terms of Agile ceremonies or the timelines or the periods which are expected for each and every activity that we expect to see in an Agile environment. Say, for example, the sprint planning meeting. This is expected to run between 2 to 4 hours, which means you are planning on what you are going to do in the next sprint. So this is what is expected, and the team is supposed to commit to that. Then we also have a daily stand-up or daily Scrum meeting. This normally runs for about 15 minutes, maybe at most 20, but 15 minutes is enough. And it should focus only on 3 items. What you did last time or yesterday, what you are planning to do today, and then the impediments, and also the blockers. These have to be discussed in that meeting. Don't try to expand the meeting to so many other things like risks, other issues, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, it becomes another normal predictive meeting instead of Agile meeting. Agile meeting must focus only on those 3 items. Then a sprint review meeting is also expected to take between 1 to 2 hours. Sprint review meeting, this is when you are showing or you are showcasing what has been done in a sprint to the end user or to the customer, what you have produced in terms of increments, what you have produced in terms of iteration. And you also get feedback from the user or acceptance from the user that it has been done. So that must run for at least 1 to 2 hours. Then retrospective is normally 1 hour to 1.5 hours. Retrospective, what do we mean by this? This is when the team is going to relook at the executed sprint. What was done wrong? What was not done properly? What should be done more? What should be done less? Lessons learned, the do's and don'ts. So normally between 1 to 1.5 hours is enough. Then the backlog refinement. Remember, the product backlog is not something that is static. It's always changing throughout the project. And there's always a process to refine, which means you might gain new requirements from users. Remember, Agile, you accept requirements until the last minute. So you have to refine it. Refine it, just making sure that it's prioritized the right way. And you also move up and down the user stories or the requirements depending on the value that you're expecting to get from there. So it is quite important in an agile environment to maintain these periods so that you can deliver successfully. So in this section of the video, we want to cover the agile artifacts, which means the components that you should expect in an agile environment. Remember, we covered the flow. Your backlog, you need your sprint review meeting, all the way to retrospective. So we now want to go through what you actually have to appreciate with these artifacts. So let us go through them one by one. So the first one we're going to start with is the product backlog. Product backlog is owned by the product owner. And what do we expect from here? We're expecting an ordered list of everything that might be needed in the product. So if you want to create a certain product, whatever you need, you put it in the product backlog. And it's always dynamic. It evolves as learning increases. So it is owned by the product owner. It also contains user stories and features or fixes that you need. So if the users are going to come up with any new requirements, it has to be added by the product owner into the product backlog. And then it's ordered by value and risk. So the main intention of Agile methodology is to provide value as quickly as possible. So product backlog must be ordered by value and risk, which means what value are you going to get and what is the risk associated with that. And it must be refined regularly with the team. Remember, we said we need to set up aside about 1 hour to 1.5 hours for backlog refinement in an agile methodology. So you must refine it as you move. After every sprint, the product owner might want to refine. Refine it means might be adding more user stories or features, or even removing some of them, and then prioritizing, rearranging them before you go to the sprint meeting. Then, the next artifact that you should expect to find in an agile environment is the sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is nothing other than the list of features that have to be delivered or concluded or completed in a specific sprint by the development team. So as the development team is producing the features, they go through the sprint backlog. And within that sprint backlog, they take item by item and then deliver or complete it before inviting the customer for confirmation. So let us understand what exactly is covered within this sprint backlog. So a sprint backlog is actually a subset of a product backlog because you select what you want to conclude in that sprint from the product backlog. So that's why it's called a subset, plus a plan for delivering the sprint goal. You also want to plan how to deliver. Sprint backlog is owned by the development team. That's the difference between sprint backlog and product backlog. Get it right. Product backlog is owned by the product owner, and then sprint backlog is owned by the development team. Then it is also created during sprint planning. There's a sprint planning meeting. You're agreeing and assuring or even committing to complete certain features within a certain sprint during that planning. So this is when you're actually creating the backlog. You choose from the product backlog to sprint backlog. It is also updated daily during Scrum meetings or daily meetings. What do we mean by this? So when you're doing your daily meetings, you are also discussing what was completed yesterday. So assuming your sprint backlog at 10 items, you completed 2 of them. So in the daily meeting, you update that you have completed two of them. You're also discussing what you're planning to do next. You also discuss that. Then it's also visible to all stakeholders. This is one of the main advantages of Agile methodology. Most of the things are very visible in terms of what exactly is the team working on right now as compared to predictive. Predictive, in most cases, the team, they can work even offshore, then they can bring the finished product later. Let us understand what is an increment in an Agile environment. In increment, these are additional features from the previous sprint, and they are all coming from the product backlog, which in most cases or in some cases you find the MVP, which is minimum viable product, is actually created, completed, and then it's actually being used in production. Then increments, it means additional requirements or features They are also delivered through the sprint, accepted by the user during the sprint review meeting, and then they are also pushed to production. So it's one of the artifacts that you should expect to see in an agile environment. So let us go through the increment to understand what exactly is it all about. What does it mean to have an increment? So an increment is actually the sum of all completed product backlog items, meeting the definition of done and potential release. What do we mean by this? When we are talking of increment, we are going through the product backlog, and then we create our sprint backlog. When something is now ready or is potential for release, that's what is called an increment. So it's actually built every sprint and no exceptions, and it must meet the definition of done. People should agree, what does it mean when we say done? What does done mean in an agile environment? And then it must add to all prior increments. That's why it's called increment. You have something earlier, then you add something on top of that. Then it must be inspected at a sprint review meeting. So sprint review meeting, this is when the development team is going to invite the customers or the users to showcase what they've done in a sprint. So in this sprint review meeting, the customers, this is when they start seeing what has changed from the previous product from the previous service as compared to the current one. So that is also very, very important to make sure that your increment is also verified by the users during the sprint review meeting. So let us go through some of the terms that you are likely going to meet when you are going through the Agile methodology. So the first one is acceptance criteria. So these are specific conditions a backlog item must meet to be accepted. This is very, very important. For users to accept something, there must be a criteria. You must define what the user should expect to accept. Say, for example, it must be high performance, as an example, or maybe if it's some product that is involved in some temperatures, you might say it might also sustain more than 1,000 degrees of temperature. If, say, for example, it's a document, a requirements document that you are used to gather requirements, you might say it might be 98% complete and so on and so forth. So acceptance criteria is also very, very important. Backlog, we have discussed the backlog about product backlog, which is owned by the product owner. Sprint backlog, which is also owned by the development team. Then in Agile, we have what is called the bend down charts. So these are the visuals showing remaining work over time. And should trend to zero, but it's going to ask you as a project manager, what is the remaining work that is still have to complete? You look at bend down chart. In most cases, someone can also even ask you what was actually completed. You look at bend up chart. So these are some of the common terms you are also going to find as you go through the Agile methodology. You are also going to have what is called a cadence, which is the regular or predictable rhythm of Agile events. Say, for example, it's like frequency. Every 2 weeks, you have a sprint completed, every 6 weeks or 5 weeks, like that. The also important item is to understand what is the definition of done. Done is very important. And don't make a mistake I've seen with other project managers or even Scrum Masters. Done is defined by the users, not by the development team. The users are the ones who are going to use whatever you're producing in the project. So they're the ones who are supposed to define what is done. They're the ones who are supposed to define the definition of done for a specific feature or even a specific user story. Increment, we are talking of what has been tested and is usable, that can be deployed in production. And then iteration or sprint, this is a fixed time box of period. Say, for example, 2 to 4 weeks, where you are focusing on producing items that are coming from the sprint backlog. Then we have the MVP. MVP, this is like, it's a usable product, minimum viable product. It might not have all the features, but it's also usable. Then we have the refinement. The refinement is normally done on the product backlog, and it's quite important that you use it. The other term you're going to find is what is called story points. These are estimations of efforts and the complexity, which is normally team specific. We also have what is called a time box. Time box is a fixed period of time allocated to an activity. When time is up, the activity stops. So it's also one of the terms you're also going to find in Agile methodology. Then user stories, we are talking of the features, the requirements that is expected of a product. And in this part of the video, we are going to look at Agile Manifesto, which are the 4 values that were actually written in 2003, and they are still radical today. We are still using them today. So let us go through the Agile Manifesto. So the Agile Manifesto actually is focused on 4 values of Agile, and we are going to go through them one by one in this specific video. So the first one is the individuals and iterations over processes and tools. So what you are seeing to the right of the screen is what is normally used for predictive. So it's just like a comparison. So instead of having individuals and interactions, processes and tools, they are normally done for predictive. For Agile, we use individuals and also interactions. Then we also have working software over comprehensive documentation. This is quite important. You're focusing more on value than documentation in an Agile environment. So instead of focusing on documenting thoroughly what the software is going to look like, as an example, you are focusing more on something that is working. And you could be thinking that this is only related to software environment. No, it can be used for anything else. Instead of focusing on documentation, focusing on something that is working. Then the third item is also customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So this value is very important also. You want to involve your customers all the way from the beginning up to the end. And you want to get as much feedback as possible from the customer as compared to predictive, where you have to wait all the way up to the end for you to demonstrate something to the customer. So the customer is collaborating. Remember, we have in an agile methodology, we have the sprint review meeting. This is when you invite the customers to confirm and accept either the increments from the sprint or even the completed product from the sprint. So customer collaboration is more important than negotiation. What do you mean by negotiation? In a predictive environment, in most cases, the customers, they bring in requirements. You start to negotiate whether these requirements should be done now or later, or is it a change request that has got some cost implications? You negotiate on the costs and so on and so forth. But in an Agile environment, you're involving the customers from the beginning all the way. And therefore, most likely, because the requirements or the changes, they're accepted until the last minute, you have your customers being involved in terms of their requirements, which one is more valuable than the other, which one is less risky than the other one, and so on and so forth. So customer collaboration over contract negotiation is very important. Then you also have responding to change over following a plan. This is one of the values in the manifesto for Agile. You are focusing more on giving value than following a plan. So how do you do that? If there is a change which the customer thinks is going to give better and more value as compared to what is in the product backlog, that change is accepted. But when it comes to predictive, you are following a certain plan. If there's a change which is coming in, it has to go through the change control process. So that is one of the values which is also very, very important in an Agile setup. So in a nutshell, we summarize as follows. We have individuals and interactions as compared to processes and tools. Then we have working software as compared to comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration as compared to contract negotiation. Then we also have responding to change over following a plan. So those are the 4 values of an Agile manifesto that you must understand and appreciate. So let us quickly go through and understand each value and what it actually really means. So when it comes to individuals and interactions over processes and tools, so what it means is communication between people is more valuable than a rigid process. So you want people to communicate more than a rigid process. And the tool that prevents conversations is working against you. So in most cases, for example, you might have a 5-minute face-to-face conversation. It might beat a 3-day ticketing queue every time. So individual interaction is also communication becomes very easy. Then working software over comprehensive documentation. What it means is proof is in the product. You have something that works, whether it's prototype or MVP, but at least you have something that you can demonstrate to your users. Then documentation that also helps no one builds or use the product is the West. So I've seen, especially when it comes to predictive project methodology, you find people, they spend so many months, even weeks, doing a lot of documentation instead of working on a working software. So you want that to just have create just in time and also just enough for that. For example, you have a working prototype reviewed by the customer that tells you more than a 200-page document. This is quite important. If you are able to produce a prototype, you give to the customer, they have a look at it, they give you feedback, than to try to document the customer requirements in a 50-page document. That's the difference, and that is what is being valued in the Agile Manifesto. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So what it means is, contracts, they define flows, okay? They don't build great products. So ongoing collaboration discovers what the customer actually needs. So the customer is able to describe what exactly do they need, so that you don't misunderstand what is normally called gulf of evaluation. You don't misunderstand what the customer is actually talking about. So if they're collaborating throughout the project, it makes sense than for someone to focus more on the contract instead of on the results. So an example of this is weekly demos with the product owner to replace quarterly requirement sign-offs. Sign-offs, you normally find them in the predictive environment. Then you have also responding to change over following a plan. So what does it mean? It means new learning is information, not failure. So plans are tools for coordination when it really changes the plan too also. So what does it mean? It means you are accepting change up to the last minute instead of following a plan. A plan might be followed, but you find that there are certain changes which might come throughout the project that produce more value than to have them go through the change request. So in an agile environment, this kind of changes, you also accept them even up to the last minute before you make your release to production. So an example of this is a mid-sprint pivot based on user feedback. Is success and not a deviation. So normally user feedback, you get it during the sprint review meeting. And that feedback might be more valuable in terms of what you are working on in the project. And therefore what is expected is you accept that change, and then the user becomes happy because what they considered valuable is now available to them. So in this section of the video, we're going to cover the 12 principles or 12 Agile principles. We need to understand them. So let us go through them one by one. So they're actually grouped into 4 themes: the customer, team, quality, and also improvement. So let us start with the customer and delivery. The principle for customer and delivery, the first one is we need to satisfy customer through early and continuous delivery. Remember, Agile is value driven. So the moment you start giving value to the customer, they become satisfied. Then principle number 2 is we have to welcome changing requirements even late. It's a competitive advantage. In an Agile environment, you accept changes up to the last minute. How are changes coming in? Changes can come in through the product owner. The product owner is going to accept or reject some changes. Assuming the change has been accepted, the product owner will edit into the product backlog and also refine the product backlog, prioritize the product backlog to make sure that the most valuable features, they're actually done earlier than the less valuable features. Then it also, as part of the principle, you also have to deliver working products frequently and also weeks or not months. So one of the principles of Agile methodology is you want to produce something that is a working product frequently, which means as you do the increments, the product is already working, but you put the increments to add more features, to add more user stories. Then the fourth principle is a working product is the primary feature or primary measure of progress. What does that mean? In a predictive environment, you wait all the way until everything is delivered, then you give it to the customer. But in an Agile environment, you are giving the customer something that is workable, minimum viable product. Then you put increments in terms of features to that product. That also gives some confidence level into the customers and any other stakeholder in that project that we're in the right direction and definitely you are going to receive those benefits. So it's quite important that you also have a working product. Then the second category, which we are going to look at, is the team and communication. So the fifth principle we are looking at is business and delivery teams collaborate daily throughout the project. So to expand on this principle is, in an agile environment, you normally have daily meetings. And that's what I normally follow. So when you have a daily meeting, you are involved in also the customer, you're involved in also the development team. You're agreeing on what was done yesterday, you're agreeing on what you are doing today, and you are removing impediments. Impediments could be coming from the customer side, or it could be coming from another stakeholder outside the project, or even from the development team. So that collaboration is continuous throughout the project. You also build around motivated people, give them support and trust. So this is the sixth principle. What it means is a facilitator or agile project manager or scrum master, you are actually allowing the team to be self-organizing, allow the team to decide what can be done, what needs to be done, and how they are going to do it. Allow the team to plan how to do it. You facilitate the planning. You facilitate if there are any conflicts or disagreements. You facilitate to come up with a solution. So the team must be motivated. You should always be motivating your team in an agile environment. Then face-to-face conversations is the most effective method. I can tell you, whether you're doing predictive or agile, from my experience, face-to-face conversations are more effective than sending an email. They are more effective than sharing a document somewhere or putting a document in a SharePoint. Face-to-face gives you also the opportunity to use what is called emotional intelligence, to look at what is called emotional intelligence. You are trying to understand if people are appreciating what you are saying. So face-to-face is very important in an agile environment. Unless it's something that is not applicable, but where it's applicable, always try to have a face-to-face discussion in an agile environment. Then the eighth principle is agile supports a sustainable and constant pace indefinitely. Due to sprints, customer collaboration, meetings, retrospective meetings, it makes it very easy to sustain a certain rhythm in an agile environment, which means when you are able to understand your velocity, how many points you can deliver in a sprint, it becomes very easy that for each and every sprint backlog, you have certain items you're delivering as increments to the product. So that is what we mean that it has to be sustainable and constant pace. Then the next one we have is a continuous attention to technical excellence enhances agility. So during the retrospective meeting, you have a continuous assessment also on the technical excellence. You are looking at what works well, what doesn't work well. You are also looking at the do's and don'ts. So that is also very, very important. And this is under quality and simplicity category. So in this section of Agile methodology, we are going to cover the mindset of Agile. We're going to look at what you have to do in doing Agile and being Agile. So I'm going to take you through these mindsets and why some of these Agile transformations, they fail. So let us go through them one by one. So the first part we're going to look at is doing Agile, which is the Agile theater. When you're doing Agile, okay, stand-ups, they happen, but blockers are never removed. Remember, we're talking about why some of these Agile transformations, they fail. So you're doing a stand-up, but you're not removing blockers. So which means whatever was stopping people from making progress today, it will also stop them tomorrow. So that has to be corrected. Then you have retrospectives, blame sessions with no actions. Retrospective meetings are supposed to look at the do's and don'ts, what you can do more, what you can do less, lessons learned, what you're not supposed to do, and so on and so forth. Then velocity, we are looking at pressure teams. Velocity is used to pressure teams to work faster. Velocity should come from the team. The team should be able to determine what level of items or features they're able to create in a certain sprint. You cannot increase, if the team says we can only take 3 points, you cannot come up with 6 points. It means you're now using velocity to pressure the team instead for them to work faster. Then sprint planning is also done by the manager and not the team. Sprint planning meetings is supposed to be done by the team. The team is supposed to choose from the backlog, product backlog, to the sprint backlog. It cannot be done by managers. If you start doing that, it means you're not doing a proper agile approach. Then product owner is a requirement clerk and not a strategist. A product owner should know which feature, which user story gives more value as compared to the others. And should not just be used for capturing like a clerk. You must be a very strategic person in terms of which products or features have more risk, which products have got more value, and then update and reprioritize the backlog accordingly. Then we have the change request to go through a formal change board. If you're in an agile environment and you find that your changes are going through a change board, it means you're now deviating straight away from the agile process. Agile, you should always focus on accepting change all the way up to the last minute. Then you can also hear people saying, we tried agile and it didn't work for us. So if you find this, it means you're just doing agile, but you're not actually doing full agile, what is expected. So what does that mean? It means you are not appreciating what is actually agile. What are the benefits? How do you apply agile? So it's also important that you should appreciate and know how to apply agile methodology. In terms of the agile mindset, when we say you are actually being agile, there are certain traits, certain activities, certain behaviors that are expected in an agile environment. And we're going to cover that in this part of the video. So the first one is, if you are being agile, the blockers are the Scrum Master's top priorities. So anything that is blocking progress, Scrum Master must make sure that is also removed. And then retrospectives, they are used to generate one actionable improvement per sprint. You want to know what you have done better, what you have not done better, you improve it in the next sprint. Then velocity is a planning tool and never a performance target. You use velocity as to how much the team can do at a particular time. And then team self-selects tasks during sprint planning. Remember your velocity, so your team should be able to select what they can do in any sprint. Then product owner makes strategic prioritization decisions daily. Product owner must know what is valuable, what is risk or less risk, and then update the product backlog accordingly. Then change is expected and absorbed in the next sprint. So if there are changes to be done, the changes are supposed to be accepted or rejected by the product owner. And they're supposed to be added into the product backlog so that they can also be reprioritized and selected for the next sprint. Then continuous improvement on how we deliver value. This is also very important. When you're being agile, you must always improve yourself on how you're providing value to the customer. So in this part of the video, we're going to cover the agile mindset on the PM side. So the PM project, agile project manager mindset. There are certain mindset that is expected when you're a project manager in an agile environment. So we're going to cover 6 of them. So let's go through them one by one. So the first one is you listen first. Active listening is very important. That mindset as a PM. In an agile environment, you need to understand and listen to what people they say, especially your team. You also need to build psychological safety. Allow an environment where people can argue. Allow an environment where people can disagree. Allow an environment where people can even discuss without fear of being reprimanded for whatever they're going to do. So team members should speak up about problems, risks, and also failures without fear or blame or punishment. Then also coaches are not direct. So this is different from a predictive environment where you're actually coaching. So in where you're actually directing. In an agile environment as a PM, you should develop the team's capability over time and ask powerful questions instead of providing all the answers. You are the PM, you're providing leadership. So allow them to give you answers, not for you to create the answers. Remove impediments as a PM. That's a very important mindset. Always remove impediments. Always make sure that the teams, they don't have anything blocking them during the sprint, after the sprint, or even before the sprint. Then protect focus. You should always shield the team from organizational noise or scope creep or even interruptions during the sprint. It will be unusual to run a sprint of 2 to 4 weeks without some disturbance coming in. Some functional managers might request resources who are working on the project to come and do some business BAUs. So you should always be protecting the team so that they can focus on what they are actually supposed to deliver as compared to the other noise and scope creep coming from the other end. Then you should always make make outcomes very visible, translate teamwork into business language for executives, and connect daily to work for strategic value. There is no project that is normally done without expected value. So always make sure that you're translating whatever the team is doing into business language so that all the stakeholders, the business executive, senior management, they can understand what is going on with that project. So in this section of the video, we're going to cover the different methods that you find in Agile. Let me explain something. Most people, they think Agile is just a very single methodology. That is not always true. So Agile is like an umbrella word for adaptive methodology. I can give you an analogy to this. Say for example, you're talking of sport. Sport is it's a broader term. The same applies to Agile. But with sport, you have tennis, you have soccer, you have can I say, athletics. You also have betting and so on and so forth. So the same also applies to Agile. Agile is an umbrella word, and it actually refers to so many other disciplines that we can talk about in Agile or other methods. So this is what we're going to cover in this particular video. So let us go through the different methods that we have in Agile. So the first one is what is called Scrum. It's also another method for Agile. And this one is best for product development. And it's also a clear sprint goals as are defined. Normally it has got a cadence or frequency of 1 to 4 weeks sprints. And the strength that you get from this is structure, accountability, and team focus. So Scrum is also another method of Agile. Then the second one we have is the Kanban. Kanban is just like a Japanese word for signboard. So it is also based for operations and support maintenance and continuous flow. And in most cases, it has got continuous flow. Its strength is visual bottlenecks and limiting work in progress. So it Kanban, everything is very visual. Then you also have the Lean. Lean is based for process optimization and also eliminating wastes across the system. As part of or as another method of Agile, you also have Lean. And in most cases, the strength that you get from the Lean is waste reduction and also fast feedback loops that you get from there. Then we also have the extreme programming. Extreme programming also is best for engineering excellence with a high quality and also a high change code basis. The cadence of frequency is normally 1 week. The strength is you have technical practice and you have pair coding. So pair programming is someone is writing the code and someone is checking it. So extreme programming is also part of Agile methods. Then we also have SEF. SEF is best for large enterprise and also 5+ teams which align to portfolio objectives. And the cadence is normally 8 to 12 weeks. The strength is also aligned across so many teams. Then the last one we're looking at is hybrid. Hybrid is also a regulated or hardware projects, fixed constraints, okay? So we have a mixture of both Agile and Waterfall. So this is normally flexible with governance and also compliance. So these are the 6 main methods that you find in Agile environment. And I can tell you, when someone says they are following an Agile methodology, you need to ask them which method are they using. Are they using